I've had a ton of fun motorcycling since I learned to ride in 2017, but I've made a ton of mistakes. I'm gonna share some of the mistakes that I've made in this video. If you can relate to any of them, or if you'd like to share your own, leave some comments below. Let's get into it. This first one I've made a couple of different times on a few bikes, and that is not researching enough about the bike before buying it. This is an easy mistake to make. You go on a test ride, you get on the bike, you think you're in love with it, you slap your money down, you're convinced to buy it by the salesperson, any number of reasons. And then after a week or two, maybe a month, maybe a little bit longer if you start lying to yourself a little bit, you find yourself not in love with that bike. We all do our research on the bikes that we buy. Sometimes it's just not enough. And I made that mistake, obviously, with the Pan America, which I've documented on this channel quite a bit. And I've got a ton of videos on my experience with the Pan America. Click up here and there's probably some links down below. Sometimes it's really hard to do all that research. And you think it's the right bike for you, turns out it's not. I love my Iron 883. I've had a ton of adventures on it, and I still own that bike and I'll still ride it. But truthfully, the type of motorcycling adventures that I want, the Iron 883 wasn't the right bike for me to start with. Don't get me wrong, Sportster fans, I still love that bike. I'm still gonna have adventures on it. Gonna have a ton of moto camping adventures on it coming up this spring and summer. But an adventure bike is where my heart truly lies. And that's why I've owned several of them over the last few years. Had I done a little bit more research when I first started motorcycling, I would have purchased an adventure bike. This channel would be very different. I wouldn't have had the Route 66 series on the Iron 883. I wouldn't have had those great experiences. And it's possible that I wouldn't have met all these great friends that I've had who enjoy the Sportster. But that's a what if. And those who know me well know I don't enjoy what ifs. I like to move forward. For new riders out there, make sure you're doing a ton of research. But at some point, I am sure you will buy a bike where you felt like you've done enough research, you buy it, and you find out it's not the right bike for you. Now this next one really hit me hard. Falling for the brand's marketing to get you to buy a bike. For me, this was the Africa Twin. Hold on, Africa Twin fans, and all of you that are starting to click-clack away saying, Joe, you love that bike. I do, and I'll get into that in a little bit. I watched all the Honda promo videos showcasing very skilled off-road riders having adventures on the Africa Twin. I thought, well, that looks like a great bike. That's perfect. That's something that I want to do. The reality is that ginormous bike, for most out there, is not suitable for single track and technical off-road riding. And I fell hard for that marketing. So don't get me wrong, I still love the Africa Twin. I will still keep an Africa Twin in my stable for a very long time. But instead of that technical off-road riding and single track, I will be using it on long distance adventures where I'll be riding on interstate and on twisty roads, on gravel roads, where I truly feel at home on a motorcycle. In fact, those types of adventures are the very reason I started motorcycling in the first place. The Africa Twin provides that for me. With that marketing though, with that ginormous bike, I fell for it. I currently don't have the skills showcased in that marketing to ride a bike that big. That's what I'll have smaller bikes like my CRF 300L Rally for. This next one may be controversial for some riders, and that is spending too much on your first bike and not enough on gear. Go ahead and leave me comments below saying it's a personal choice, and I understand that. For me, I am doing something dangerous. I am going to be wearing protective gear that includes a full face helmet, protective jacket and pants, gloves, and really good boots. And in some cases, depending what I'm doing, a back protector, elbow protectors, and knee protectors. If I'm doing something dangerous, I want to come out alive if something bad happens. If I'm skydiving, I'm going to be wearing all the protective gear necessary to keep me safe while skydiving. If I'm rock climbing, I'm going to be wearing all the protective gear while rock climbing. The same is true for motorcycling. When I first started riding though, I spent a lot of money on my Iron 883 and almost as much modifying it and not as much as I should have on protective gear. Sure, I had protective pants, some decent gloves and boots, and a pretty decent leather jacket. But some of you who watch my videos, you could probably see that there's a hole in one of my elbows from a high side crash that I had. After that crash, I had a ton of bruises and a ton of scrapes on my arm. I came out okay in that crash, mostly because I wasn't going that fast. Had I been going much faster, I'm not sure I would have come out as unscathed as I did. Now I have a really different perspective on gear. My advice to beginner riders, make sure you're spending as much as you can on the protective gear that you will need. Don't worry too much about the money that you're spending on the bike. In fact, your first bike will likely not even be your last bike. There will be more opportunities to spend the money on your dream bike. Make sure you're buying that protective gear. It's 58 degrees outside. It's late February. Let's continue this conversation on the bike. So one of the biggest mistakes I've made on my Route 66 trip, let's go this way, was not dressing warm enough. I rode home in the rain from the Ozark Mountains all the way to Hannibal, Missouri. I rode in the rain in 40-degree weather, and it was cold, man. Even before it started raining, I was cold. I had my heated gloves, I had some heated gear. I was on the iron, and while that engine was warm between my legs, my upper body was freezing. Hindsight, I probably would have stopped and just stayed, but I had to get home from work. Hindsight, I probably would have made a different choice on that one. It just would have been better to stay warm and safe. But my mindset was, I need to get moving. Now today it is 47 degrees out, and I'm not dressed super warm, but I'm not going that far. I'm not going hundreds of miles through the Ozark Mountains in the rain. Now I've got all the gear. I got heated grips on this bike. Someday I'm gonna have a heated seat on this thing. I'm gonna have everything that I need. I'm becoming an old man, I think. Old man bike. Old man gear. I'm toasty warm right now though, even though I've got what I would wear during early to mid-spring. But man, it's good. It's freaking February. It's February 19th right now, and I'm riding. It's nice. I'm not gonna complain. I want you to leave in the comments for me, how cold is too cold for you guys to ride? I know when I first started riding, there was no such thing as too cold. I rode. If the snow wasn't flying, I rode. I have a little different policy now, I think. My desire to be warm has begun to outweigh my love of riding. So during winter, usually 45 and above, I'll try and get out. Leave me in the comments below, how cold is too cold for you? All right, another mistake I've made, buying the wrong bike. And sometimes you just don't know. Like, I've had on my channel a lot of different bikes. And I've had criticism for buying a bike and making some comments about it not being the best bike for me. Sometimes you just don't know until you ride it for a little bit and then discover it's not for you. And many of you know, for me, that's the Pan America. And I'm pretty happy with this Africa Twin right now. I have countless videos about how me and the Pan America didn't get along, both my riding needs and style, and because the Pan America, the damn thing wouldn't run. I love this bike. I know it's not the fastest thing in the world. I know that 21 front inch wheel makes it not as great in the twisties as in 19. But man, where I want to go and what I want to do, this bike is so much fun. You know you bought the right bike. You just know. Yes, the old cliche, if you turn around and smile at your bike, you know you've bought the right bike. But man, the moment I got on the AT, I knew I had the right bike. In conjunction with buying the wrong bike is buying the wrong bike as a beginner. Now, many of you know I started riding on my Harley Iron 883, and I have professed my love for that bike. I still have it in my garage. It's a fun bike to ride. It's a fun bike to mod. To be honest though, it was too much bike for me to learn on. Many of you don't know, and I've never shared this before. I'm sharing it here now. Laying all my cards out there, telling the truth here. My very first day on that bike, 3 miles in, I dropped it. I was going around a turn, and in the MSF course, they teach you to use all freaking 4 fingers on the brake lever. And so like, okay, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll listen to you. That works great. Don't get me wrong. Take the MSF course. You'll learn a ton. And don't stop learning throughout your motorcycling life. But having them tell you use 4 fingers to grab the brake, 2 fingers or 1 finger is plenty. Plenty. And I used all 4 fingers to grab the brake lever. Got all my fingers bound up. I whiskey throttled it around a corner and dropped it. In fact, I think the black mark from my exhaust scratching against the curb is still there. It was too much bike for me to learn how to ride on. I wish I had a bike that had less power. For some of you riders, I know you've learned on much more powerful bikes than the 883. And for everyone who says the 883 is weak and underpowered and all that, yeah, if you've been riding for a bit, yeah, it is a little bit underpowered for certain scenarios, especially overtaking on the interstate. But when you're first learning how to ride, in my opinion, in my experience, it's too much bike. That's the next mistake. Wrong bike, too much bike as a beginner. This next one I really, really want to change. And it's one of my biggest mistakes, I think. Now, I've had a lot of great experiences on the motorcycle. I've met a lot of great people. But one of the biggest mistakes I've made is riding alone too much. Now, I know commuting to work or just getting out on a warmish February day like this, I'm going to be riding alone. Not too many people want to ride when it's less than 50 degrees like it is now. But one of the joys of riding is sharing that experience with others. And I want to change that. I want to ride more with other people, share my love more than just on the internet. And I'm going to be taking a ton of trips this summer, exploring this country and maybe beyond. And I want to share that with other riders or other people who are interested in riding. You know, one of the beauties of any hobby is sharing that experience. It just makes the enjoyment of that level up, you know, that much higher. Now, another big one. One I'm really disappointed in myself in is selling bikes that I wish I hadn't sold. Now, the Iron 883 that's in my garage right now is not the original one that I bought. That's 2.0. And the guy I sold it to some other kid, and I know it's somewhere in Illinois now. Tried to track it down, and I can only get so far. If I knew the kid's name, I would try and buy it back from him in an instant. So if you see a olive gold Iron 883 2017 with ABS somewhere in Illinois, let me know. I'm trying to track that bike down because I would absolutely love to have the original. I regret selling that bike. Now, another bike I really regret selling is I bought a 2003 100th anniversary Sportster 883 for cheap, like dirt cheap. I fixed it up a little bit,
and sold it for just a tiny bit more than what I bought it. Pretty much just covered all my labor and some parts and such. But I wish I held on to it a little bit longer. I wish I had given myself an opportunity to experience that bike a little bit longer. Showcase it on the channel a little bit more, but I sold it too soon. I regret selling that bike. Leave me in the comments below what bikes you regret selling. I know there's a lot of you out there who've sold a bike and regret selling it. And I know a lot of you, like me, after you regret selling a bike, you start looking for that same bike. A lot of us have done it. All right, now it's getting a little bit chilly here, so let's head in and talk a little bit more in warmer environments, maybe start a fire, and talk about the mistakes we make riding a motorcycle.
Thanks for watching this one, everyone. Ride safe out there and keep your wheels rolling in the right direction. I'll see you in the next one.